It's the year 1643 in rural Lincolnshire, England, and you are born on a cold winter night in a stone farmhouse called Woolsthorpe Manor. Your name is Isaac Newton. You arrive unexpectedly early, a tiny, frail baby not much bigger than a quart-sized mug, so small that no one thinks you will survive your first days. Your father, a prosperous farmer also named Isaac Newton, died before you were born, leaving your mother, Hannah, a widowed teenage mother. In the midst of civil war and uncertainty, you begin life fragile and fatherless, cradled in your young mother's arms as the winter wind howls outside. By the time you're 2 years old, your mother has remarried. She leaves you behind to be raised by your grandmother, moving to a nearby village to start a new family with your stepfather, Reverend Barnaby Smith. You watch from the doorway as your mother rides away in a horse-drawn carriage, not understanding why she can't take you with her. In your toddler mind, you feel confusion and abandonment. For nearly 9 years, you live apart from your mother, a lonely child left to make sense of the world largely on your own. This early separation leaves an invisible mark on you. You become solitary and self-reliant, prone to keeping your thoughts and feelings private. You later realize that this isolation, while painful, also nurtures your imagination. With no close companions, you turn inward, playing alone and dreaming up ideas to occupy your young mind. When you are 10, your life changes abruptly again. Your stepfather dies in 1653 and your mother returns to Woolsthorpe, bringing along your half-brother and half-sisters. You meet your 3 younger siblings for the first time, but you hardly know how to act around them or around the mother you barely remember. She tries to stitch the family back together, but you remain distant, more comfortable with your own company. Soon your mother notices that you're an unusual boy, not strong enough for farm work, always lost in thought or tinkering with some homemade contraption. Hoping to find a path for you, she sends you to the local grammar school in Grantham. At age 12, you leave your quiet hamlet and move to the bustling market town of Grantham to live with a pharmacist's family while attending the King's School. In Grantham, you lodge at the apothecary Mr. Clark's house, where you finally encounter a world of books, tools, and curious experiments. Mr. Saul and Mr. Clark's shelves of medicines and potions fascinate you. You secretly observe his mixing of remedies and begin to learn the properties of chemicals. At school, however, you're initially an indifferent student. You prefer constructing miniature machines over memorizing Latin grammar. In the apothecary's attic, you carve small wooden models and tinker late into the night. You build elaborate toy furniture for the Clark children and craft your own working gadgets. One of your favourite projects is a tiny windmill modelled after a real one being built nearby. You even harness a mouse on a treadmill to power it, proudly nicknaming the mouse the Little Miller. Sometimes the mouse stops running to nibble on the grain it's supposed to be grinding, much to your frustration, but the ingenuity of your creation delights everyone who sees it. You also have a mischievous streak. You tie a paper lantern to the tail of a kite and fly it on a dark night, watching with quiet glee as your glowing ghost soars over Grantham and startles the superstitious townsfolk. While other boys roughhouse outdoors, you'd rather measure how high the wind can carry you when you jump, or experiment with sundials and water wheels. These philosophical plays, as you call them, don't win you many playmates, but they sharpen your mind and hands for the scientific wonders you will later unveil. Life in the schoolyard isn't easy. You're a lanky, quiet boy who often drifts off in daydreams, an easy target for teasing. One day, the school bully gives you a hard kick in the stomach for no reason at all. Doubling over in pain, something snaps inside you. You decide you've had enough. That afternoon, you challenge the bully to a fight behind the church. Though he's bigger, your pent-up anger fuels you. You grab him by the ears and shove his face against the stone wall, utterly defeating him. The other boys gape in astonishment. Not only have you won the fight, you resolve to beat him in the classroom too. From that moment, you transform your approach to school. You bury yourself in your studies with fierce determination. Within months, the boy once dismissed as idle rises from the bottom to the very top of the class. You thrill your teacher by reciting long Latin passages flawlessly and devouring every book you can find. By the time you're a teenager, you've left that bully and all your classmates far behind academically. Back home, your mother still hopes you'll become a respectable farmer and manage the family estate. In 1659, she pulls you out of school to tend the farm. Dutifully, you try to plough the fields and care for the livestock, but your heart isn't in it. More often than not, your mind wanders. You find yourself sitting under trees reading borrowed books or working out maths problems on scrap paper when you should be watching the sheep. You simply aren't a farmer. You'd rather measure an eclipse than a plot of land. Before long, it's obvious that leaving school was a mistake, though under your watch the chickens wander off, the fences fall into disrepair, and the crops suffer from your inattention. Recognizing your talent lies elsewhere, your family relents. Encouraged by your uncle, an educated man who sees your potential, your mother allows you to return to King's School in Grantham to prepare for university. Relieved and overjoyed, you dive back into your studies. On crisp spring mornings, you walk 7 miles to school from home and back again, memorizing Latin on the road. All their hard work pays off in 1661. At 18, slightly older than Tepeum, you earn admission to Trinity College, Cambridge, a triumph that surprises those who once thought you a mere daydreamer. With a mixture of excitement and nerves, you pack your few belongings and depart Woolsthorpe for the grand halls of Cambridge, ready to immerse yourself in higher learning. College life at Cambridge opens a new world to you. You arrive in the ancient city in the autumn of 1661 as a lowly subsizer, meaning you work as a servant to other students to help pay your tuition. By day you sweep rooms and serve meals for wealthier classmates. By night you study by candlelight until your eyes ache. You don't mind the menial chores, as long as you can access the university's treasure trove of books. You eagerly attend lectures on Aristotle's philosophy, still the standard curriculum, but you quickly grow dissatisfied with the old teachings. Europe is buzzing with radical new ideas, though officially they haven't made it into your classes. In secret, you seek out the latest writings by modern thinkers, Galileo Galilei, who proved objects obey mathematical laws, René Descartes, who imagines nature as a machine, and Robert Boyle, who experiments with the invisible air. These ideas electrify you. You fill pages of a notebook with questioned and bold hypotheses, daring to think beyond what your professors teach. Plato is my friend, Aristotle is my friend, but my best friend is truth, you write defiantly in the margins. In these youthful musings, you can feel your mind sharpening into the tool it must become. You also pursue mathematics with zeal, teaching yourself geometry and algebra from Descartes' La Géométrie. In a short time, you master everything current mathematicians know, and then begin pushing into the unknown. Still, in lectures you remain quiet and withdrawn, far more absorbed in your private studies than in campus social life. Some evenings you're so lost in thought that you forget to eat dinner. More than once, nobody shows up to your own scheduled lecture. You're now a junior instructor, but you proceed to deliver the entire lesson to an empty room rather than waste the opportunities to articulate your ideas. By 1665, you earn your bachelor's degree from Trinity College. You plan to stay on for further study, but fate intervenes. That year, the Great Plague sweeps across England. The deadly epidemic reaches Cambridge, forcing the university to shut its doors. Everyone flees the crowded colleges for the safety of the countryside. So you reluctantly board a horse cart back to Woolsthorpe, thinking your scholarly pursuits must be put on hold. Little do you know, this unwelcome break will become the most productive period of your entire life. A personal renaissance born out of isolation. Back at your mother's farmhouse, you set up a makeshift laboratory in your old attic room. While plague ravages the land, you spend hour after hour at your desk and workbench, utterly alone but fiercely inspired. Later you will call this time your Anni Mirabilis, the years of wonders, or, as you reflect in old age, the prime of my age for invention. Freed from lectures and chores, you let your curiosity roam. First, you attack an unresolved mathematical problem: how to calculate instantaneous change in areas under curves. Drawing on methods of algebra and geometry, you invent a whole new form of mathematics, what you call the method of fluxions, later known as calculus. With it, you can solve problems that stumped mathematicians for generations, like finding the precise slope of a curve at any point. This discovery is like finding a new key to unlock the secrets of nature, though you share it with no one yet. Next, you turn to the mystery of light. Using a glass prism you bought at a local fair, you poke a small hole in your window shutter, darkening your room except for one thin beam of sunlight. As you pass the prism through the beam, a vivid rainbow splashes onto your wall. Unlike others, you don't merely marvel at the colours, you rigorously investigate them. Through experiment after experiment, you conclude that white light is not a simple purity, but a blend of many colours that the prism separates. It's a groundbreaking insight. Colour is inherent in light itself, not produced by the glass as Aristotle's followers claim. At one point you even go so far as to stick a bodkin needle beside your eye to see how applying pressure creates optical illusions, a somewhat hair-raising proof of your dedication to science. With homemade lenses and mirrors, you devise theories on how telescopes could be improved to focus all those colours to a single point. These solitary experiments in your childhood home lay the foundation for modern optics, though again you publish nothing yet. And then comes the apple, at least as the story will later be told. One warm afternoon in the late summer of 1606, as you seek refuge from your studies in the garden orchard behind the manor, sitting under the shade of an apple tree, you reflect on your recent mathematical work and the motion of celestial bodies overhead. Suddenly, an apple breaks free from a branch above and falls to the ground beside you with a dull thump. You glance at it. A simple everyday event. Apples have been dropping to the earth for as long as anyone remembers. But this time your mind seizes on a profound question. Why did the apple fall straight down to the ground rather than sideways or upward? What force drew it to the earth? Gazing up at the sky, you consider the moon hanging nearly motionless in the blue daylight. What if the very same force pulling on that apple is also pulling on the moon? An extraordinary thought takes shape. Perhaps the pull of gravity extends far beyond this orchard, beyond England, beyond the Earth's surface, all the way to the moon and the planets. You imagine the moon, like the apple, is being pulled inwards, continually falling toward the Earth, but kept in orbit by its sideways motion. In that flash of insight, you unify the earthly and the heavenly in one elegant idea. The force that makes apples drop is the same force that guides the planets in their courses. You later describe that moment as when you began to think of gravity as extending to the orb of the moon. It's a revelation that will forever change humanity's view of the cosmos. Heart-pounding, you run calculations to test this idea, comparing the moon's orbit to predictions from an inverse square force pulling it toward Earth. The numbers aren't perfect, you lack precise data, but they're close enough to convince you that you've glimpsed a great secret of nature. In the quiet countryside, with plague all around, you have discovered gravity. Over these months of 1665 to 1606, you achieve more alone than most could in a lifetime. By the time Cambridge reopens in 1667, you'll return as a vastly different man, one who holds the blueprint of modern science in his mind, though nobody else knows it yet. Back at Cambridge, you resume academic life almost as if nothing happened. Outwardly, you're just a young scholar taking up a fellowship. In reality, you carry with you a treasure trove of insights. In 1667, you are elected a Fellow of Trinity College, and 2 years later, at only 26, you ascend to the Lucasian Professorship of Mathematics, succeeding your mentor Isaac Barrow. As a condition of this post, you are expected to remain unmarried, and even eventually enter the clergy, but you quietly obtain a special exemption from taking holy orders. Your unorthodox religious views, you've privately come to doubt the Trinity, make you hesitant to become a clergyman. Truth be told, you have little interest in romance or family life anyway. You've long been wedded to discovery. Thus you settle into a life of teaching and research, pouring all your energy into unravelling nature's mysteries. You rarely have many students in your lectures, sometimes no one shows up at all, but that doesn't deter you. You lecture to empty benches if you must, articulating your thoughts on mathematics and optics for the imaginary audience. During these years, you begin to share slivers of your genius with the world, albeit cautiously. In 1668, you design and build a revolutionary reflecting telescope. Tired of the blurry, rainbow-rimmed images from traditional telescopes, you realise that using a curved mirror instead of a lens could focus all colours to one point. Grinding the mirror painstakingly yourself, you produce a small but powerful telescope that astonishes anyone who peers through it. Bright, crisp images of Jupiter's moons and the craters of our moon. In 1671, you send this telescope to the Royal Society in London for a demonstration. The scientific gentlemen are amazed. No one has seen such a device before. Overnight, your reputation in scientific circles soars. Early the next year, you are invited to join the Royal Society as a Fellow. Though honoured, you remain wary of the public eye. Your first contribution to the Society is a paper explaining your experiments with prisms, the theory of light and colours that you had deduced years before in Woolsthorpe. Eager to make your mark, you published the paper in the Society's Philosophical Transactions in 1672. The reactions are mixed, and for a sensitive soul like you, the criticism stings sharply. A few mebders, including the Society's curmudgeonly curator of experiments Robert Hooke, take issue with your conclusions. Hooke, an accomplished scientist but notoriously prideful, insists that your ideas about light merely build on his own and others' work. In letters and discussions, he questions your findings and suggests you've made errors. To you, it feels like an attack on your intellect and honesty. You bristle at Hooke's tone and perceive him as envious and disrespectful. What began as scholarly debate escalates into a battle of egos. You fire back testy replies defending your work, while Hooke and others continue to poke holes and demand more proof. The stress of these public disputes gnaws at you. You have always been fiercely protective of your discoveries, and now that they're under assault, your temper flares. After a particularly heated exchange, you abruptly withdraw from the controversy. Feeling unappreciated and misjudged, you decide enough is enough. You will publish no more and retreat into your quiet Cambridge refuge. For the next several years, you indeed stay out of the public scientific fray. You focus on deepening your private researches in mathematics, astronomy and alchemy, communicating little with the outside scientific world. If sharing knowledge only invites attack, you would just as soon keep your genius to yourself. In the late 1670s, as you lie low, two personal blows strike you. First, in 1678, your beloved mother Hannah dies. You had rushed home to Woolsthorpe to care for her in her final illness, and after she's gone, you feel a melancholy emptiness. Then, a year later, Robert Hooke writes to you attempting a cordial discussion of planetary motions. Despite your strained history, this correspondence unexpectedly rekindles your interest in a problem you'd left simmering since the apple fell: the motion of planets under gravity. In those letters, you and Hooke theorize about whether an inverse square law of attraction would produce elliptical orbits, but the exchange ends abruptly and inconclusively. Still, the seed has been replanted in your mind. You start quietly working through orbital dynamics again, perhaps spurred by a desire to best Hooke at this game in due course. The real turning point comes in 1684. One summer day, Edmund Halley, a young astronomer from London, arrives at your Cambridge chambers. He's heard whispers that the great Isaac Newton, who hasn't published anything significant in years, might have answers to an age-old cosmic puzzle. Over tea in your book-lined study, Halley poses the question directly. What path would a planet follow if it were attracted to the sun by a force proportional to the inverse square of the distance? You barely hesitate. An ellipse, you reply, recalling the calculations you did long ago. Halley's eyes widen. He asks how you know. You realize to your embarrassment that your earlier workings proving this have been mislaid. I think I can demonstrate it, you murmur. Halley's visit ignites a spark. To satisfy him, and perhaps to reassert your priority over any claims by Hooke, you set out to reproduce the proof. What begins as a short paper for Halley grows rapidly into something far more ambitious, a comprehensive mathematical treatise on motion and gravity. For the next 2 years, you are a man possessed. Holed up in your Cambridge study, you write feverishly, often foregoing food and sleep. You derive the 3 fundamental laws of motion that govern how objects move, laws so elegantly universal that they apply equally to falling apples and orbiting planets. Building on these, you formalize the law of universal gravitation. Every particle of matter attracts every other, with a force proportional to their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. This simple law, expressed in precise equations, explains a dizzying array of phenomena: the tides of the oceans, the orbits of moons and comets, the trajectory of cannonballs. You calculate and geometrically prove how gravity produces the elliptical orbits observed by Kepler. Page after page you weave together mathematics and physical insight, working out the motion of projectiles, pendulums, planets and fluids. The manuscript swells into a monumental book that you title Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. Your friend Halley encourages you at every step, even offering to pay for the publication when the Royal Society hesitates at the cost. Not everything about writing the Principia is smooth. At one point, an argument with Hooke nearly derails the whole project. Hooke hears that you've solved the problem of planetary motions and insists you credit him for first suggesting the inverse square gravitational law years ago. You, convinced of your own independent genius and irritated by Hooke's meddling, threaten to abandon publishing the book altogether, if pressed on the matter. Thankfully, Halley diplomatically intervenes and soothes your temper. In the end, you include no mention of Hook in the Principia, a silent but resounding message to your rival. Finally, in 1687, the Principia is printed and presented to the world. It is epoch-making. The dense Latin text and geometric diagrams are understood by only a select few, the intellectual giants of the age, but even those who can't follow the mathematics recognise that a revolution has occurred. Word spreads that you have explained the clockwork of the heavens. Scholars across Europe hail the Principia as perhaps the greatest scientific work ever written, placing you in the same pantheon as Copernicus and Galileo. You, the once reclusive Cambridge scholar, become instantly famous. Though you don't seek fame, it finds you. You are lauded as the man who uncovered the mathematical laws underlying the universe. One contemporary gushes that your brilliance is comparable to a shining star illuminating the whole world. With the publication of the Principia, you step fully into history. At age 44, Sir Isaac Newton, for you will soon be knighted for your achievements, is now acclaimed as the foremost natural philosopher of the era. The shy young man who pondered alone in an empty lecture hall has become a luminary whose ideas will dominate science for centuries. And yet, while the world heaps praise upon you, you remain as privately driven to l'œil and privately anxious as ever, fretting over those who challenge your glory. The success of Principia propels you into a new phase of life. In the years following 1687, you gradually leave the academic cloisters of Cambridge for the bustling centres of power in London. After England's political upheavals, the glorious revolution of 1688, you find yourself drawn into public service. In 1689, you even served briefly as a Member of Parliament, representing Cambridge University. Legend has it you spoke up in Parliament only once, and that was to politely request a window be closed to cut the draught in the chamber. Clearly, politics is not your passion. Nevertheless, during your time in London, you mingle with influential statesmen and intellectuals, and your fame only grows. By now you're seen not just as a brilliant scientist, but almost as a national treasure, a symbol of Enlightenment rationality and English genius. In the early 1690s, however, you endure one of the darkest periods of your personal life. Decades of relentless work and the strain of defending your ideas catch up to you. In 1692-1693, you suffer a mysterious nervous breakdown. You sleep poorly, if at all, for nights on end. When you doze off, you're plagued by terrifying dreams. By day, you're anxious and suspicious. In letters to friends, you make strange accusations. At one point, you imagine that your colleague John Locke is part of some plot against you. Later, you're mortified to realise you had even wished for his death in a paranoid fit of anger. Your mind, usually so controlled and lucid, is betraying you. Historians will later wonder if years of alchemical experiments and the mercury vapours they produced might have poisoned you and contributed to your erratic state. For about a year, you are unable to work, consumed by insomnia and emotional turmoil. Thankfully, by 1694 your crisis passes. You apologise to the friends you alienated and slowly regain your stability. Chastened and seeking a change, you begin to distance yourself from the ivory tower of Cambridge. A few years later, opportunity knocks from an unexpected quarter. In 1696, your admirer Charles Montague, head of the government's treasury, offers you a prestigious new position, Warden of the Royal Mint. It's a job in London overseeing the coinage of the realm, mainly administrative, but it comes with a hefty salary and the chance to influence national policy. Sensing a fresh start, you resign your Cambridge professorship and move to London, carrying crates of books, manuscripts and laboratory apparatus to a house near the Mint. Thus, in your mid-50s, you embark on a second career. What was supposed to be an easy sinecure transforms under your direction into a crusade for economic reform. Britain's currency is in disarray, with widespread clipping, shaving off bits of coins for profit, and rampant counterfeiting. You throw yourself into the work with the same intensity you once brought to physics. You oversee a great recoinage program to replace all older currency with newly minted coins, a gargantuan administrative task. More dramatically, you take it upon yourself to hunt down counterfeiters. Dressed in plain clothes, you frequent smoky taverns and markets in disguise, sniffing out rumours of forgery rings. Methodically, you gather evidence and witness statements. Like a one-man investigative unit, 17th century London's very own Dirty Harry, you build airtight cases against these criminals. Over several years, you personally interrogate dozens of suspects, often intimidating them into confessions, and secure numerous convictions. Many coin counterfeiters are sentenced to death, and you make no effort to seek clemency for them. In your view, they are undermining the economy and deserve no mercy. The same ruthlessness you applied to scientific rivals, you now apply to enforcing the law. Your colleagues at the Mint are astonished at your dedication. The warden's job was supposed to be cushy, but you have turned it into a relentless campaign. Eventually, in 1690, you are promoted to Master of the Mint, a position of even greater influence and ample income. Under your leadership, Britain's currency is stabilised and the Mint runs efficiently, if resentfully, as some old-timers chafe at your strict reforms. This chapter of your life reveals another side of you, an able administrator and scourge of lawbreakers. By now, you are wealthy for the first time, and your scientific days at Cambridge feel like a distant past, though you remain scientifically active in other ways. During these London years, you also reach the pinnacle of scientific society. In 1703, your longtime rival Robert Hooke passes away. Almost immediately, you are elected President of the Royal Society, a position you will hold for the rest of your life. At meetings in the Society's rooms, you preside in a flowing wig and stately attire, the very image of authority. The younger natural philosophers treat you with deference bordering on reverence. You encourage their experiments and publications, as long as they don't contradict your own theories. Truth be told, as president, you can be autocratic. Perhaps to avenge slights from your younger days, you now dominate discussions and sometimes bully those who oppose you. Some whisper that in old age you have grown vain and vindictive, quick to take offence and eager to settle old scores. Indeed, you do not hesitate to use the Royal Society to crush threats to your scientific legacy. One such threat comes from across the English Channel. For years, a dispute has been brewing between you and the brilliant German mathematician Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz over who invented calculus. Back in the 1680s, Leibniz had published papers on calculus using his own notation, and it became apparent that he had developed the method independently, though later than you. At first you were cordial with him, but as the question of priority grew contentious, English mathematicians, loyal to you, accused Leibniz of plagiarizing your work. Leibniz, outraged, appealed to the Royal Society for an impartial investigation. In 1712, as president of the Society, you convene a committee to review the evidence. What Leibniz perhaps didn't realize is how much weight your word carries. You handpick the committee members, all Englishmen sympathetic to you, and even go so far as to secretly write much of the committee's final report yourself. Naturally, the report upholds your claim as the sole originator of calculus and strongly insinuates that Leibniz copied your ideas. Published as the Commertium Epistolicum, the report damages Leibniz's reputation. He dies in 1716 under a cloud of suspicion, while you privately feel satisfied that justice, as you see it, has been served. This calculus controversy, though arcane to outsiders, consumes a great deal of your passion in your 70s. It also shows how fiercely you guard your legacy, even resorting to underhanded means. Similarly, you clash with the Astronomer Royal, John Flamsteed, when he's slow to share data you need. You manoeuvre to have his star catalogue published by the Society without his consent, an act that enrages him. As president and as Britain's preeminent scientist, you rule imperiously. Woe to anyone who crosses Sir Isaac now. Amid all this, honours continue to roll in. In 1704, with Hooke gone, you finally feel comfortable publishing your comprehensive study of light, optics, which further cements your scientific legacy. In 1705, Queen Anne herself dubs you a knight, an almost unheard of honour for a natural philosopher. Kneeling before your monarch and rising as Sir Isaac Newton, you experience a rare moment of public acclaim. You remain a bit uncomfortable with celebrity, but it seems wherever you go, crowds gather to glimpse the famous man who discovered gravity. Younger scientists seek your patronage, and literary figures mention you in the same breath as the heroes of antiquity. You have become something of a living legend. Even the wisest of men can make mistakes, however, and one of yours comes in the realm of finance. In 1720, the South Sea Company, a trading company, becomes the centre of wild stock speculation. Despite your logical mind, you get swept up in the economic euphoria, At first you prudently sell your South Sea stock for a nice profit, only to watch the price keep climbing. Convinced you misjudged, you invest a significant portion of your fortune back into the bubble. When the market inevitably crashes, you suffer heavy losses, reportedly around £20,000, a devastating sum. Frustrated with yourself, you quip to a friend, "I can calculate the motions of the heavenly bodies, but not the madness of men." The episode shows that even Sir Isaac Newton, for all his predictive prowess, cannot foresee human irrationality. You shrug it off publicly, but privately it must sting, a humbling reminder that the earthly realm of commerce is as chaotic as any comet's path. Through the early 1720s you remain active and relatively healthy, though signs of age start to appear. You've never been robust, and decades of intense work have taken a physical toll. You begin to suffer from bladder stones, an excruciating ailment that at times leaves you bent over in pain. In 1722 you have a particularly painful episode that nearly kills you. Thereafter you delegate more of your duties at the Mint and the Royal Society to trusted assistants, including your devoted niece Catherine, who manages your household and cares for you in your old age. Still, your mind stays as sharp as ever. At Royal Society meetings, you continue to preside and even engage in scientific discourse, though younger men like John de Saglier often handle the hands-on experiments. You've become the grand old man of science, the first scientist to be so universally revered in his lifetime. Visitors to parties, citizens from abroad come just to pay homage. You sit in your armchair by the fire, a thin smile on your face as admirers bombard you with questions or request a lock of your hair as a keepsake. Sometimes you oblige, sometimes you gently nod off mid-visit, after all you're well into your 80s. On occasion you reflect on your life's work with a touch of humour. When one admirer asks why you spent more time studying distant stars than our own sun, you famously chuckle and reply, "The sun is by far the best candle to study by," then add with a rare laugh that you've said enough for people to understand your meaning. Those around you cherish these moments. They can later boast, "I saw Newton laugh," a claim nearly as rare as a sighting of Halley's Comet. By March of 1727, you are 84 years old. A remarkable lifespan in an age when most do not see 60. You've outlived nearly all your contemporaries and become a bridge to a new generation. One February evening you preside over a Royal Society meeting for the last time, feebly but resolutely guiding the discussion. Shortly after you collapse with unbearable pain, another kidney stone attack. This time you sense the end is near. You retire to your bed in a grand London townhouse, courteously provided by your niece and her husband, and endure the pain with stoic resignation. The best physicians in England attend you, but there is little they can do. On March 20th, 1720s, you drift into a deep sleep and do not wake up. Sir Isaac Newton dies quietly in the night, leaving the world he so profoundly understood. It is as if a great light has gone out. The news of your passing spreads rapidly and is met with an outpouring of tributes. England gives you a burial normally reserved for its kings and heroes. Your oak coffin, covered in a black velvet pall, is carried on the shoulders of noblemen into Westminster Abbey. In that magnificent cathedral under soaring arches, you are laid to rest among monarchs and poets, the first natural philosopher to be honoured in this way. The funeral is a grand affair. Ministers, peers, and fellow scientists attend in droves, paying respects to the man whose intellect redefined our understanding of nature. As the coffin is lowered into the tomb, the inscription lauds your peerless contributions to mathematics and physics. In the eulogy, one speaker proclaims that Newton surpassed the human race in understanding, capturing the sentiment of the age. You, the once sickly boy born in a remote hamlet, have been elevated to the status of national icon. Even as your body rests in the abbey, your legacy only grows. In the years and centuries that follow, your name becomes synonymous with genius. Philosophers refer to the era after you as the Age of Newton. Poets and playwrights invoke you as the man who unlocked the treasures of truth. And your laws of motion and gravitation remain cornerstones of science, the very foundation on which later giants like Einstein will build. Students for generations memorize Newton's laws, and astronomers navigate by the calculations you pioneered. The word gravity itself comes to symbolize not just a physical force, but seriousness and weight, and homage to the force you elucidated. People marvel that one person's insight could encompass everything from why an apple falls to how planets orbit the sun. You've changed humanity's perception of the universe. Where once men saw mystery and miracles, now they see law and order thanks to you. By the 18th century, the term genius transforms in meaning, no longer referring only to artistic talent but to profound intellectual power, largely because of the towering example of you, Sir Isaac Newton. You showed the world what the human mind at its apex could achieve. Voltaire, the famed French writer, after attending your funeral, writes admiringly, "He was not distinguished by any shining qualities, but by genius only, and an unparalleled zeal for the advancement of science." Alexander Pope pens the famous epitaph, "Nature and nature's laws lay hid in night. God said, 'Let Newton be,' and all was light." Even your flaws and idiosyncrasies, your secretive alchemy experiments, your prickly pride, your solitary habits, fade into anecdotes, while your achievements burn brightly through history. And so your story draws to a close. The lonely boy who gazed at the stars from a Lincolnshire farm, the young man who quietly derived laws of the universe by himself, the celebrated scholar who sparred with rivals and ruled an institution, all these phases were chapters of an extraordinary life. As we imagine ourselves in your shoes, we feel the wonder of seeing the clockwork of nature from behind the scenes. You are Sir Isaac Newton, and you have just discovered gravity, not just the force that makes apples fall, but the principle that the entire cosmos dances to. You spent your life pursuing truth with a singular passion, and in doing so you redefined what mankind can know and do. Your journey, from birth to your final breath, invites us to ponder the mysteries of the world with the same childlike curiosity and relentless drive that you embodied. Though you have passed on, your spirit lives in every calm but fast-paced explanation of physical law, every prism splitting light, every spacecraft navigating the planets. In the grand play of the universe, you wrote the Principia, the foundational rules, and for that humanity will forever be in your debt. As you rest among kings at Westminster, your discoveries continue to shape the destinies of generations to come, a lasting testament to a life steeped in genius and discovery.